Let's find out if you're ready for love. Here's your marvelous host, Nikki Lee.
Hello, and welcome to Ready for Love Radio. This is your host and love coach, Nikki Lee. It's Valentine's long weekend, so I decided, I normally do something unusual for Valentine's Day, but I am actually, this is going to shock you all, I am going to do something traditionally romantic for Valentine's Day this weekend on the show. So I know you're all probably going into shock. I know you are, but you all are going to love this. This is a very unique love story, and y'all would be disappointed if I didn't have a unique something for you. So this is a unique love story. I'm going to introduce you all, and I'm probably going to mess up his last name, and he will straighten me out if I do. Larry Indiviglia? Is that right, Larry?
Very close, Nikki. Indiviglia. Very close.
Okay.
And
okay.
Here we are. Pleasure to be here.
See, I did listen when you said that, so I was close. I was close. Yeah. All right. He wrote a book, and I like this title. This is very unique. The title of the book is 126 Days, 11 Minutes, Our Love Story. Now, that probably has you curious going, what? But it's going to make sense, I promise. The book was written to honor the life of Gayle and their love for each other. Although brief, Larry considers his relationship with Gayle as one of the most profound experiences of his life. He also hopes that 126 Days, 11 Minutes inspires others to say yes to love even when your logic says no. Larry believes there are many beautiful souls who are looking to discover and experience unconditional love. His book shows it's possible. Let me ask you this, because I'm going to forget if I wait. I run into people so often, Larry, who say they're not going to give a relationship a chance if they don't think it's going to last, just last forever. And, I've had many relationships over time that lasted for a certain amount of time, and then for various reasons, they ended. And I'm not one of these kind of people that if a relationship ends, I don't feel like I failed. It's run its course for various reasons. What do you think I'm wrong about that? Or what do you think about that?
I don't, Nikki. I believe connections in life are always for a reason, including love relationships. And some of them last a long time. You can get a couple that meet in high school and they're married for 60 years. Beautiful. And then there's others that people come into your lives for a reason, whether it's 6 months, whether it's a year, and there's a purpose for it. And they're supposed to be in your lives for a specific reason. So you learn something about yourself, you learn something about others, you learn something about love. Sometimes it could be real good, sometimes it could be bad, sometimes it could be ugly, right? But you learn. So I am with you on that. Every relationship has a purpose, and sometimes they do run its course in that process of open discovery. As long as people are honest with each other, I think they all have a purpose in their life. Yeah.
Well, I love what you said about how we learn something about ourselves, because I think any relationship we have, when it's over, we should look back on it and figure out what we learned about ourselves. Because any relationship, we have learned something. We may not like to think about what we learned, but we have learned something about ourselves. And sometimes, and I've had this conversation with a really good friend of mine, is we've learned what we don't want in a relationship, what we won't tolerate, or how we need to set our boundaries better the next time we're in a relationship. There's so many things that we can learn from a relationship, and so many things that we learn about ourselves and even what we need in a relationship.
Nikki, you bring up a great point, is what we need, and our needs differ. It's interesting in the one of the all-time great books about relationships, His Needs, Her Needs, His Needs, Her Needs. And I think it was Harkey is the author, but he came up with the 5 basic essential needs of a man, and this was in a marriage situation, heterosexual marriage situation, and the 5 essential needs of a woman. And there's some deviation to that, and there's certainly some exceptions, but I think you hit on the key thing is a need is something essentially you must have.
Right.
A want is different than a need. But
yes.
And sometimes it'll validate, right? You'll have a situation and a connection with a man if you're a woman, if you're a man, heterosexual relationship at least in our discussion here, and it'll validate some of your feelings and some of your needs, and then it'll also convince you that, well, this person, I can't meet this person's needs, and she can't meet mine for whatever reason. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, and we have to know ourselves and what we need. What we want is a whole different scenario. I completely agree with you on that, and I love when people say that. I'm like, yes, they get it.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to know what we need, and we have to look honestly at the person and evaluate if they can fill that need. And no matter how much we care about the person, if they can't fill that need and we can't fill what they need, it's not going to work. So,
no.
Yeah, I love it. Completely agree with you. Okay, now, can you give us a brief summary of 126 Days, 11 Minutes?
I will. I will be brief, and I will give you the summary and kind of a nice, concise synopsis of the book.
Okay.
126 Days, 11 Minutes, our love story, is about 2 actively aging seniors in their 60s, Larry and Gayle, who meet online on an online dating site and, against all odds, perhaps, fall madly in love with each other, are captivated by each other very early. And I say maybe against all odds because one of them, Gayle, is battling stage 4 breast cancer and has been for over 4 years when they first connect.
Ooh.
The couple, Larry and Gayle, decide to live for the today, certainly not the yesterday, and certainly not looking too far ahead in the tomorrow, and have a very authentic, honest, passionate, intimate, open, and nourishing relationship filled with joy, fun, adventure, for 126 days and 11 minutes. And what they both learn is that it is possible and worthwhile to love with loss rather than never to have loved or risked at all. And
I love that.
The key point is that a choice a person made, that they both made, Gayle made a powerful choice to continue to embrace life and love and putting herself out there with stage 4 cancer and a single mastectomy. And Larry made the choice to love this person, Gayle, this woman, Gayle, and to have a relationship and not worry about what either is not going to happen or will happen. And they both listened to their hearts. The heart doesn't have any questions. They both listened to their hearts and said, let's go for it. And they did.
I think in that situation, too, do you think it's easier or harder to love unconditionally in that situation?
It's easier. In fact, Gayle mentioned to me, Nikki, it's an insightful question. It's impossible to love somebody unconditionally, another unconditionally, unless you love yourself first unconditionally.
Exactly.
And I had been married 25 years, and I learned a lot from it. I was divorced 9 years when I met Gayle. I had a couple of relationships But I did personal work. I did some personal work, and I accepted and respected myself, loved myself unconditionally, and I was able to see that in Gayle and be able, despite her cancer, outside of cancer, looking at this person and how courageous she was, and that without any expectations, judgment, or conditions, that, I was going to extend my love as best I can and hopefully receive that in return.
Well, and it's such an experience when you're going through cancer treatments. I have been around so many people throughout my life that had been through it, but until, the winter of 2019 and 2020, I had no clue what it was like to go through it personally. And it's to say your emotions and physically it's up and down, and holy crap, wow. It's hard to interact with other people, and it just really, I live by myself, and although having help, I think, might have been good sometimes, I was so glad that I could just come home and be by myself after treatments. I really was, because I needed that. But I'm that kind of person. When I'm sick, I want to be left alone. So, but that's just me. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, Gayle had she pursued also alternative approaches and therapies, and she had a very, very strict regimen of exercise, dance. She was an Argentine tango dancer. That was part of her life. In fact, one of her photos graces the cover of the book is one of her professional photographs of a couple doing Argentine tango. But she had a very, very precise sleep, exercise. She didn't work. She was 68 years old, so she just dedicated herself to fighting the disease. And so I rolled with that. I knew what was going to work for her, what she was capable of doing. She had some good days, bad days, but the 2 months of the 9 weeks, and it's shared in the book, she was in relatively good health based on the situation she was in. Okay, she was able to do a lot, and that kept her going until ultimately the cancer metastasized, came back to her brain. But that was maybe at week 10, 68, 70 days into the process of when I knew her. But she felt she wanted to get out there and do things when she felt up to it. And, Nikki, I always saw the best of Gayle. I never saw her, yes, her eyes would be puffy, there would be things, but she never complained, and she was always upbeat when we were together. Yeah.
That's good.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. I was actually just saying this to my boyfriend the other day. Something that drove me crazy is when people say, "You've got this. You've got this." There were days I just would look back and say, "I'm tired of having it all the time."
Yeah. No, hey, it's Gayle would tell me on the phone, "Hey, Lara, I don't think I can make it tonight." There were days that happened, and then days if she couldn't be there. Yeah, she doesn't. But when she was available, she felt good. I think she felt good, and I think she was okay with that. And but it's you learn what people. I think it's the beauty of life and love, Nikki, when you make that choice to continue to embrace it, you do everything you can based on what you could control to kind of hold on to that, and that's kind of what I noticed with Gayle in the relationship I had with her.
Well, and when you're dealing with a chronic condition, you have to learn what you can control and what you can't, and how to live your life with that, with those factors, you know. And the sooner you figure that out, the sooner at peace is going to sound funny to anybody that hasn't had to deal with it, but a certain peace does come over you when you get to that point. I mean, I've gotten to that point with the things I have to deal with, and it's like, you know, there's certain trade-offs, you know, when you're like, okay, this I can do, this I can't do, but what other things can I do now that I might not have done before, you know? And
you know, Nikki, that's a great point, because I think that's why Gayle was able to put herself out there. She said, you know, she was a very beautiful woman. She was a full 5'7" in her day. Of course, when I met her, she was 68, but she had already had a mastectomy. She had neck surgery because the cancer had moved into that. She had years of chemo, radiation on the brain, and, you know, as you know, and maybe some of your listeners, this takes a toll on your body. I mean, you know, come on. Yet she was able to say, I am confident in at least what I have, and I'm putting it out there. I'm not going to throw it in somebody's face, but I'm putting it out there like I could still love somebody. I'm still a woman. I remember that first dinner I shared with in the book somewhat. You know, she told me, Larry, if I couldn't be a woman, I'm not going to be sitting here in front of you, okay? I'm not a charity case, nor I'm going to sit down there and talk about cancer every time we get together, but it is a battle I'm fighting. So she was comfortable, and she had the courage to do that. Yeah.
I was that way the first time I wore something, and my scar from my open heart surgery was obvious, and somebody said something about it. But then I got to the point where I had people that actually came up to me and were offended and thought I should cover it up. And that got ugly for them. So it's like,
as it should have, my dear.
It's like, no. I said, no. This, I survived this. I earned this, and if it bothers you, you need to turn your head. So no, you know. So no, not going there with you. So
absolutely.
No, that didn't go well. So what motivated you to write the book? And this two-part question: was it difficult to write?
For the second question first, was it difficult to write? Actually, no, because it was a method as a catharsis for me. I had learned so much from Gayle that I felt if I didn't do it, I started writing the book 4 days after she transitioned, Nikki.
Okay.
And I wanted to help me get through. Things were fresh in my mind. I always keep detailed journals. I had voicemails, text messages. I had poems, cards. You know, I had a lot of things over the 4 months that I knew Gayle, and it was fresh in my mind. And I said, I've got to share these lessons. This was a very profound and unique situation. And if I don't do it now, if I don't do it in the next 6-7 weeks, I don't think I'm going to have it all together to be able to look back and say, now, what did this all mean? So I decided to take that route. And so it wasn't actually hard to write the book. And I had an accountability person, Kelly Watson, that I gave writing to every week. She kind of kept me on track, which helped. So it wasn't actually hard to write, although I had my moments of emotion, you know, during some of it. And actually, in a strange way, COVID helped me write the book, Nikki, because it affected my personal and professional time. So I had more time to write.
True.
Makes sense. So functionally, that made it, you know, physically possible. Now, mentally and emotionally, you know, that's another story, but I felt very, very moved to get the lessons from Gayle and to honor her life. Now, why I wrote the book when I look back, Gayle had mentioned on day 51, I think it is, the book is detailed in days. Each day is a chapter, and each chapter has a title. And she had mentioned she was a photographer for 33 years, very successful one, and had published 3 photographic books of images, of dancers, of models, of nature, etc. But in any case, she had mentioned, she said, Larry, after all this cancer, I'm really feeling moved to write a 4th book. And the title would be My Enlightened Journey, Dancing, Loving, and Living with Stage 4 Breast Cancer. And she wanted to share that as, lessons she learned and how she approached it, etc. Well, that book she never wrote that book. But the idea went into my subconscious. And after she transitioned and passed away, now by no way is this an autobiography of Gayle. It is not the book necessarily she would have written. But in the process of reading 126 Days of 1 Minutes, our love story, you will get to know Gayle. You will know things about her. So maybe some of the things I shared, she may have shared in her version of her book. I don't know that. She never lived long enough to do it. But that was in my subconscious. I said, maybe this will be something here that she'll live on, albeit in that last stage of her life. But I do share other things about Gayle in the book, about her life, but not too much. Mostly it's the time I spent with her. So that was kind of the motivation, the why behind it. And also, was it hard to write the book in the process of writing? Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, I did the same thing. I was so motivated once I started learning how serious the aortic dissection is and how misunderstood and all that. Mm-hmm. And plus, I mean, my life changed radically in like less than 24 hours. So I needed to kind of work through all the stuff I was trying to absorb. So, and I knew that journaling helps to do that. So I actually wrote a mini version of what happened, mm-hmm. and the fact that women aren't really told the signs of heart failure, which I had no clue what was going on because I didn't have any heart pain, no chest pain, nothing. Mm-hmm. After the initial dissection, that was real bad. So I actually wrote a mini version of what happened and released that along with, there's like 90 pages for journaling in the back of the book. So I completely understand the cathartic and the catharsis of putting it out there. So I completely understand mm-hmm. the need to do that. It's funny, though, when I look at that book now, mm-hmm. I normally have a very, I have a definite style that I use when I write, and the mm-hmm. style of that book is very different. And I think it's because of the mental space that I was in when I wrote that. But I mean, exactly. you can feel a very different feel to that book when you read it. So it just, at some point I'm going to expand it, and of course now I have considerably more surgeries to include to it and that kind of thing. But at some point I am going to expand that book.
And you hit on a great point, Nikki. It's the space, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, you were in at the time. Right. And that will not necessarily dictate, but that will influence, right, the mm-hmm. spirit of your writing at the time. No question. Right. No question.
Yeah, it surprised me, actually, because I got it done and released so quickly that I hadn't gone back. And when I went back and I opened the book, I'm like, ooh, that's me? You know, because mm-hmm. it was just that it actually felt cold to me when I read it. It's so different. So, of course, because my books have the same tone that I have when I do the show. It's very similar, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it was jolting to me when I picked it up to read it. So it's very different, I feel. So now both of you were in your mid-60s. She was battling mm-hmm. stage 4 cancer. Mm. What made you pursue a relationship? I mean, you were both on dating sites, so you were thinking about it. But were you, when you were on the dating site, were you thinking about getting into somebody else that had cancer, or what?
No, I wasn't. And interesting question. I had said I've been a life and business coach for fitness professionals, people who own gyms, studios, and in the fitness world for many years. And one of the exercises we do, Nikki, is we call it 10 forms of wealth, and we score ourselves from a scale of 0 to 10 on different areas of our life. How are we doing financially, professionally, sphere of influence, adventure, legacy, mindset, spirituality, etc. And one of the wealth areas is love, Love. And I was low. I set out for the new decade and the new year like I was at 3. And I had 2 other relationships, respectful, with 2 women that I had met online. And as you said earlier, they didn't, one lasted a year, the other maybe 6 months. They were for a reason, but they weren't long-lasting. So I said for 2020, I am setting the intention to get my love wealth area from a 3 to at least a 7. I mean, I got to do something here, okay? So I got back online, and it was early. It was like January 6th, and I saw a woman that had viewed me, and it was Gayle, and I sent her a text, via the online site, et cetera, and she said, Larry, I do better talking. Here's my number. Please call me. Which sometimes is unusual, so I called her. And we were on the phone for over an hour, more than an hour. And she was very authentic, very open. And my goal also for the new year, this is past January 2020, Nikki, was I wanted to experience align with a person mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. I never really had all 4, even though I was married 25 years, and all due respect to my ex-wife, etc. But I just didn't. So I says, well, that's kind of what I'm looking for. And then after being on the phone with her, I mean, I was very connected with her, and she was very open, very honest. She told me immediately about her stage 4, and I got more captivated the more and more I talked to her, and I really felt I needed to discover more about Gayle, this woman. And that led to our date the next night. We went to dinner the next night. We had the phone call on a Monday and on Tuesday. So, no, I wasn't, but I was so captivated and just so connected to her. It was easy. The discussion was just easy, and she was hopeful. She was optimistic on the phone. She said, look, I've battled this for over 4 years, and I feel I can beat it. It's going to take some more effort to do it, but I'm optimistic about it, Larry. So that's kind of, where I was at, and what attracted me to Gayle. Once I talked with her, I wanted to know more about her, Nikki.
Okay. All right. I get that. Well, and you can't pick the circumstances. You can pick the person, but you can't pick the circumstances. Okay. Now, I know because I have cheat notes, and I have a copy of the book, and I've read a good chunk of it. I haven't read the entire book, but I've read a good piece of it. I love the part where she pulls up in the car. That was cool. Okay. and I know that she made you promise that you would love again. So, will you? No pressure, no names or anything. But
I have.
Okay, good.
I met somebody specifically once I wanted to move on again. I believe because of 126 days, 11 minutes, our love story, this lady, her name's Elizabeth, asked me, well, what were your prior relationships, Larry? And we're contemporaries, we're seniors. And I told her, and then I said, how long did they last? And then the last one, I said, well, my third relationship lasted 126 days, 11 minutes. And she said, that sounds very specific. There's got to be a story behind it. And I shared what happened. And I think because of it, Elizabeth was very intrigued. And, we're still dating right now.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You said not only is there a story, there's a book about it.
Yeah, and she wanted to read it right away. It was interesting. Some women may not want to do that. Elizabeth wanted to read it right away.
Awesome.
And I think she maybe felt, well, maybe I'll get some more insight into this man.
I know.
So she did. She read it. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. So how does she feel about the book?
She feels very strongly about it. She gave me an endorsement, which is nice. She feels, and she told me, she's a learned woman, and she said, Larry, look, I'm pretty upfront. If I thought your book was, not very good, I would tell you. She says, I think it's a special book. I think it's unique. I think it's inspiring. People may know the ending in that Gayle transition ultimately, but she says, to me, it's an inspiring book on how a man and a woman could relate and treat each other and love each other under difficult circumstances, and then how even though a connection may be brief, it could be profound and very meaningful and life-changing. And she said it gave me hope again that there's kindness in this world. She said, the real heroes in many cases in life, Larry, are the ones who aren't here anymore, right, that have moved on. They gave their all. And she said, but what you provided for her was admirable and genuine. And Gayle did a lot for you, I know, but she was so lucky to have you in her life during those last 4 months of it. She says, I think it was just a wonderful thing. And she said, I commend you for doing it. I know it doesn't define your entire life, but that was something very special. And I appreciate that you did that and that you had that relationship with her.
I like that.
Yeah. Yeah, she was very complimentary about it. So not threatened by it at all. That's good. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, that says a lot about her, because it's amazing the people that feel threatened by things they shouldn't. So that's good.
It is good, and I will say this. I told Elizabeth, I said, there's no comparison. I'm not comparing you to Gayle or vice versa. Gayle was there in my life for a certain reason, almost like we talked about at the outset of the call here, Nikki.
Right.
And there was a purpose for it. And because of what I learned from Gayle, I'm taking what I learned into my relationship with you now. I'm a better person. Yeah.
Well, that's the way it should be. That's the way it should be. I don't see why people can't get that. Why they have to feel jealous of a past relationship. Because, like I said, you learn from each relationship, and then you carry that to the next one, and it should improve the next relationship. I don't know. I just don't know.
Well, love is, love is, I guess they say, what, Carole King song, only love is real. Everything else is an illusion. Sometimes love could be an illusion for some people, right?
Well, that's what we do in our business lives. We learn something on a job, and we take it to the next job, so we're better, or we should. We get business skills and we take it. It's the same in all facets of our life. Why can't people understand that? Okay. But that's a whole other tangent. Okay, we stick with the story. So what benefits do you think people will receive from reading the book?
Wow. Number one, one of the benefits will be that it's never too late to fall in love. Okay?
Oh, I like that.
It's never too late to fall in love. And there's hope there. That the other benefit is the powerful choices that you can make in life. Gayle sometimes said life is, maybe life is kind of evolves by choice or chance. But I think some of the choices that you make and the powerful choices you make, in Gayle's case, she made a very powerful choice, as I said earlier, to embrace life and love during a difficult time, which turned out to be the last stage of her life. So if you make a powerful choice, there's a chance for something really beautiful and significant to happen. So the power of choice is there. And sometimes you have to make those powerful choices under difficult circumstances. Nikki, you've done that. You've done that in your walk and your journey, and I'm sure many of your listeners have. Another benefit of the book is to learn. You can learn and many lessons about how to be loving with each other in texting, in your talking, in your relationships, and how a man could lead in a relationship and how a woman could respond, but not blindly follow. There's the Argentinian tango, art imitating life, life imitating art theme of the book. Gayle was an Argentine tango dancer. She was okay, and in Argentine tango, the man leads in the embrace. The woman responds to a strong lead. If the man leads weakly or lamely, okay, she's not going to respond very well, right? And I know now in our society now, women have more influence, are stronger. They have things they're doing that are just beautiful. Gayle was okay with letting the man lead because she knew she would respond to a strong lead. She was okay with that. And you can be a strong woman and still follow a strong man's lead. And she had that relationship with her tango. So, again, that dynamic can work, can be successful, can be loving, can be non-intimidating if there's an understanding and a great self-awareness. The other benefit...
Can I add something to that?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I think as long as the strong man is doing it with respect, there's no problem.
Correct. Always. Yeah.
I have seen it being done without respect, and I have lots of issues with that. But
absolutely.
I completely agree.
And well justified in what you're saying. Absolutely. Another benefit is you will appreciate what people can do for each other. Standing by someone and by their side is worthwhile, okay, even under difficult circumstances. And sometimes that will, and this is a key point, and I share it in the book, when Gayle started, when the cancer came back, it got very difficult in a lot of different areas. You will learn that people, if you're open to it, people will come into your life to help you, okay? People will come into your life to help you. So the benefit is you will learn to accept that help and that support and that assistance, and I cite many examples in the book. You will also learn how people on the cancer journey, the benefit is you'll get an appreciation for how the cancer journey, there is fear and there is pain involved in a person who is undergoing treatment. But with faith, it will give them the strength to maintain hope. And the benefit is maintaining hope and having the audacity to maintain hope, to perhaps wait for a miracle to happen or the possibility of a miracle to happen is still there. So hope eternal is very, very, very important. I think finally, too, you can benefit from the book if you or a loved one, all of us have been touched, nearly all of us, there's so many of us, as you know, Nikki, touched by cancer or other types of diseases. It doesn't have to be cancer. You will get a benefit from the book about the unbelievable work hospice people do in the last stages of life. I'm very, very complimentary to Parkview Hospice Home and those angels that work there. And also you will learn about, get the benefit of you're a patient's advocate. I turned out to be Gayle's advocate towards the end, asking questions, listening to the patient. You will get a benefit of how you could really help a person, in this case the patient Gayle. Listen to her. Every case is different. Even though you may not agree of maybe the choice she makes, you have to respect it, okay, and help her transition as she wants to transition as best you can. So if those situations come up, and all of us may face that someday, you'll get some insight onto the hospice experience and the patient advocate experience. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I've always stood up for myself, but it's been very interesting, as dramatic and as extensive as my situation's been the last 5.5 years. Learning to maneuver the healthcare system and how to find the people I need in order to make sure things are being done the way I want them to be done, and
Correct.
finding the records that I want, because I'm making sure to keep copies of all of my records of everything. Just because I want to. Well, I mean, when you're in surgery for 12 and 14 hours at a time, and then you're in a coma for a week, and this kind of thing, I want to know what happened when I was unconscious. So so getting all of what you want in your hands, so that you can see what happened while you weren't there, or while you can get the additional details, and knowing who to go to and all that kind of thing. It's I mean, even having worked in a hospital and being a supervisor at one point, it's hard to get your hands on everything you want. So it's quite the journey. It really is.
It absolutely is, and you have to ask questions, especially because you could very easily, Nikki, become a number. And this is in all due respect to the very dedicated medical professionals that are out there. Absolutely they are. But every case is different, and sometimes you could just become a number, and you have to know. You do have to. It's your body. You have to know what is right for you, where you want to go. And to pursue the avenue that you feel you're going to get the best result from, and that's really, really important. Absolutely.
Well, I've been very fortunate with the vast majority of the people that I deal with on my teams, and I mean, if there's a problem with somebody, I mean, I immediately, I'm like, no, I want them off. I'm not no. I mean, I went in and about 4 months ago, I went in and somebody actually, as I was walking in to have a CT scan, which I do like every 3 months right now, to check the status of everything, and I was walking in to have those done, and I walked up to the desk to check in, and they're like, oh, that was just canceled. I'm like, excuse me? And I know why it was scheduled, and she said, no, your provider's office just called and canceled. And I went upstairs and like, no, there's a reason it was done. Who did this? And I found the nurse that did it. And she said, oh, well, I didn't feel it was necessary. I said, well, who cares what you thought? No. The doctor and I discussed this. This is why it was being done. And so we had to reschedule, and I had to go back again. But it's like, it was not your call. You don't know me. So, no. And turns out that it was very needed, and when I went back and had it done, we now have to do surgery again. So she was incredibly wrong. So you have to stand up for yourself.
You do, and that's and maybe that's the other benefit. Just a quick add-on here. Gayle always said, how important it is to stand in your truth. Okay, and when you stand in your truth into your core values, and don't deviate, and you know who you are, and you have great self-awareness. Don't deviate from that. Don't let somebody talk you out of something. And she stood to her truth to the end, so there's a benefit to that. And that actually led to, and I shared in the book, the process that we had to go through to get Gayle into an inpatient hospice home here in San Diego. There's not very many of them. There's only 3 of them. One has 4 beds. 2 of them have 4 beds. The third one has 6 beds. And they have it's covered by Medicare, and they have 24-hour nursing care in 2 shifts. And there was a variety of reasons we were able to get Gayle in there, some unbeknownst to me, but we were able to make it happen. And that's because Gayle knew about her cancer. She knew how she wanted to transition, and we were able to make that happen. And I share it in the book as to some of the things that came to pass, but it's a lot of things, what you just shared, Nikki, about asking questions, saying no, asking another question, and then pursuing that avenue that you feel is going to work best for you. Yeah.
Right. Well, and I've taken a lot of time over the last 5.5 years too to get to understand the condition, and then I had genetic testing done because nobody could figure out why this even happened to me. I'm like, okay, my world has been flipped upside down. My health is drastically different than it was. I want to know why, So, and when I was diagnosed with cancer, they offered to do the genetic testing for me. And after my mom died of cancer, I said, okay, I want to know some things. So I went in and I had aortic testing and cancer testing done. And so I actually have answers now, and so that gives my doctors some extra things to gauge and keep an eye out for. And
absolutely.
So it's nice to, I don't know if nice is the right word, but it helps to have some answers. It helps them to have some answers to know. Actually answered some questions about my dad's health from when I was about 11 or 12, but and like I said, doing research, I'm in 2 support groups in Facebook that I can go in there, and everybody there gets it. Everybody understands those frustrations I have every day, and if I'm upset about something, I can go in there and go, okay, y'all, you all understand because y'all deal with this every day too. Have you had, in like with the surgery coming up, I can go in there and say, okay, this is what I'm facing. What have y'all had? What kind of recovery time did you guys have? Is there anything specific y'all can think of I need to ask the doctor before we do this? Because I've got like a pre-op workup coming up in a couple weeks, So it just, I like to be forearmed. I like to, when I go in there, I like to know what I'm talking about. And the thing is, the doctors respect that. And so when I do have questions or something comes up, they sit down and they have intelligent conversations with me. I appreciate that. I want to know what's going on.
Absolutely, Nikki. And you hit on a great point. There's a difference. Boy, this is so important. There's a difference between reacting to something and then responding. Now you have laid the foundation with your doctors and whoever else on a response, not a blindside reaction, which is a huge difference. Absolutely.
Well, and when we did the surgery in 2019, I actually had an aneurysm that was so tiny nobody cared in November, and by the time I went in June, it was like 6.8 centimeters, and she basically said, "What are you doing later this week? You need to be in surgery now," So, and at that point, we sat down and we made all the decisions, But and I understood what they were talking about. That's the kind of research that I've done that I understand where we're at, and I can sit down with them and help make the decisions, so I know what we're going to do, So, it makes a difference. I want them because they're the professionals, but I want to understand what we're doing. If you're going to crack my chest open, I want to know what we're doing.
It's interesting you say that, Nikki, and kudos to you. I had a question somebody asked me in regard to Gayle's situation. He happened to be a physician, a friend of mine I went to college with. But anyway, he said, Larry, do you really understand the extent of a stage 4 diagnosis and what it is, especially if somebody has been through surgery, then radiation, surgery to her neck? So that means it moved from the breast to the bones, to the cervical, to the bones, radiation on the brain, I mean, this cancer is probably throughout Gayle's body. This is after she had transitioned. He said, did you, like, really understand all that? I said, John, I didn't, probably. But it was almost better that I didn't. Okay?
Yeah, it probably was.
Because maybe if I did, maybe I would have, when I had the first date, I would have got up and walked away. I mean, I don't think I would have done that, but in my case, in Gayle's situation, in our love story, it was it was better I didn't know the extent, right? Because then maybe I wouldn't have risked, and perhaps I do want to caveat that, because some people have asked me that question, and I said, well, honestly, I didn't start researching stage 4 breast cancer after I got off the phone with her before the date. I didn't do that. I went and said, I got to meet this woman. She seems really cool. So, so maybe my naivete, and even though I had a stage 1 rectal cancer, it was different. So I'm kind of bringing that home to the points you're making in the understanding of when you have a serious condition, what it all means, what can happen. Mm-hmm.
Well, and each person's experience is so different too.
That's right.
Every one of us experiences. I mean, that's real obvious in my support group with the dissection. I mean, even those of us that have identical diagnosis, our individual experience is so different because our individual health is so different, Mm-hmm. So even if you research the condition, you're not really going to have that person's experience. You're not going to understand their personal experience and what they're going through, So,
exactly.
You wouldn't really know. That's why you need to talk to them and be around them and see how they're dealing with it. So, I mean, you'd have some basics, but yeah, you gotta see what they're doing and how they're handling it and their body's reacting. So, if a person, and like this all started because one of the women in my cancer support group was thinking about starting a relationship with somebody, and she's stage 4, and she was asking all of our opinions and asked what we thought. And my comment was, and I told her what I thought, and then I said, and then when you finish reading what my thoughts, go to Amazon and get this book. And I said,
thank you, Nikki.
Wait a second. Now, I need to have Larry on the show. So, it just, we each have to do what's right for us, but since she was already thinking in that vein anyway, I said, and so then to, get somebody else's perspective on it that's been there, you need to read his book.
There's, it's interesting, you mentioned when you put, and I think, Nikki, you've done this in your journey, and many of your listeners have, and I'm sure many in the support groups, which are great, because when you're willing to put yourself out there, whether it happens to be in a testimonial, in a book, in a video, whatever it happens to be, you're willing to put yourself out there, something incredibly positive will happen that you can't predict. Okay? And I got a note from a lady, I think she's in Illinois. She married her husband. She was 23, and her husband was 29, and he had stage 4 cancer, and she married him. And they had their first child, and then twins, 3 children, and he just passed away at age 34. But she married him. And she knew, every case is different. It wasn't necessarily that he was going to die in 1 year, 2 years, or it turned out for him 5 years of their marriage. But she said, this is the man for me. And, she finds herself, a single mom and a widow now. But she said she didn't care. She felt that, she was going to marry this guy, and he was the man for her, even with cancer. So there's people out there when you put yourself out there and you make that choice. And I know it could be tough for a woman if they've, like Gayle, Gayle had the mastectomy, and she had neck problems from the surgery, so there was things, and chemo, does things to your skin. You know all that, Nikki, and a lot of your listeners may know too. So, but she still had confidence enough to say, hey, what I have here, I'm comfortable with, and and I believe somebody else can be comfortable with it, because there's always someone else out there for you, and you have to keep that hope alive, right? We talked about that if you put yourself out there, Gayle did, something beautiful will happen, and you'll attract somebody into your life. And Nikki, as you so intuitively have said, every case is different. You don't know that somebody's going to necessarily pass away. I didn't think Gayle was going to pass away in 4 months, and I don't think she did either. That's the way it turned out. But this lady who reached out to me, she had five wonderful years and 3 children with this gentleman. And so love could take different turns. And with society, our society now is there's rules, right, and expectations. And sometimes you need to put that aside and tap into your soul, right? What's important to you? Let's kind of keep society's expectations aside, and if you do that, I think you're going to experience something that you never thought maybe that you were experiencing. I certainly did, with Gayle.
Oh, stop worrying about society. Society's full of crap. But you want to tell the listeners how they can find more information about you in the book?
Yeah, absolutely. 126 Days, 11 Minutes, Our Love Story is presently available on Amazon Books, Amazon.com, in paperback or Kindle format. The audio version should be coming out any day now on Audible. I was hoping it was going to be out before Valentine's Day. It's still possible. I'm waiting any day. And so that's on Amazon's Audible division. So you can go in there and get the audio book. It should be coming out any day. I had 2 senior voice actors who did Larry and Gayle. I did not read it because I didn't want to emotionally go through it, and I just thought it would be strange doing it with another woman, frankly. So that's coming out, and if anybody wants to get a hold of me, I'm on LinkedIn, Larry Indiviglia, at Larry Indiviglia on LinkedIn. I'm also on Facebook at Larry Indiviglia, and those are the 2 ways to do it. If you want to email me directly, I answer them all. L Indiviglia, I know that's a mouthful, LINDIVIGLIA @gmail.com, and that's the best way to find out more about the book. I may do a companion workbook to the book. I have a couple ideas in the works, but right now, just getting the book out, it's fairly recent. That's the most important thing.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, I will have all the links for Larry and for the book on my website. If you go to www.readyforloveradio.com/126days, you will find it there. So, Larry, thanks a lot for being here today. I enjoyed the conversation. I hope that the listeners got lots of benefit.
Nikki, thank you so much. It was an honor to be on your show. You really inspire so many people in how you're serving others. Continue to do that work, because it's certainly made a positive impact. And keep your health number one and stay healthy, so we can continue to learn and get all this great information and insight from you and your show.
I'm certainly trying. I'm certainly trying, and my teams are doing their best to help me. So
absolutely, thank you.
They are working hard to keep me as well as possible. And listeners, I'll be with you next time on Ready for Love Radio.